where they are, completely isolated, standalone unit tests. Your code is fully testable. It's not detestable code. And then we have what we called them L1, L0 and things. And now, because we wanted to get rid of a name, because we were finding we were getting into all sorts of religious wars around testing. And that's not a unit test because you're talking to a SQL. You're talking to a database. But I've got a Sprock. How do I test the Sprock without going to the database? So we just gave them names that didn't mean anything to stop the arguments because bored with trying to find the right name of things. So we wanted to go to that kind of shift. Problem was we'd had decades of investment in this, and we wanted to get to this. How are we going to do that? It's going to take a long time. So we did it a little bit at a time. We tried it, see if it worked. This is each one of these bar charts is a sprint, 3-week sprints. This is a 2.5-year transition you see in here in front of your eyes. So we did a little bit. We did a little bit more. No, this is quite working. Right, let's try our L1 test now. Okay, yeah, this is working. And then you see kind of like periods where we would then start burning down like whole chunks of the test suites because we'd converted them into unit tests. So it tends to be quite bitty. And then finally over here, we finally got rid of our last ones. So that was over time, took us 2.5 years, a little bit at a time. That's what DevOps looks like, slow improvements. In our pull requests, now we've done that, now we've paid down that technical debt that we had, we're able to run our test suite on every pull request, the L1 and L0 tests. So at a pull request, usually before a human's even looked at it to see if it's good or not, before we even do a code review, and we have a policy that actually says one reviewer is approved. So every change that goes into production has to have had a minimum of 4 eyes on it, is what the 4 eyes sort of thing. Or, well, 2 people, anyway. And then, but we run before you even look at it, usually the system's ran the test suite against it, so it compiles. It's had like 85,000 unit tests run against it. It's pretty good, And so when you're looking at it, you're looking for code style. You're looking for, is this the right way of solving the problem? Not, does this solve the problem? And we find from our research, humans are actually really rubbish at spotting what tests spot. Humans are better at spotting code styling. Is this the right way of solving this problem? Why don't you go and use that API over here rather than this API? That's what we're good at. We're not good at spotting individual, syntactical issues. That's what you want tests for. And then, so now we do that. And so now we've managed to shift our quality earlier in the process. So it's less about automation testing when we've delivered. It's more about every single check-in, every single pull request has a full test pass ran against it before we even merge that code into master. Right. When I first started at Microsoft, I was handed a desktop machine, which I've still got in my attic, and a laptop. It was this big honking Dell thing at the time. And you used to run stuff on the desktop machine and then RDP in from your laptop is kind of how we ran. Then we moved to running VMs, that's how old I am. And then from VMs, when we went into team rooms, we didn't have room for all these desktop machines. So we put all those desktop machines in a cupboard, in a lab, and then you RDP'd into your lab hardware. And then as the clouds come on, we've moved our labs. We needed that room for more team rooms. So we've knocked them down, got rid of them, and moved that hardware into the cloud. And we used DevTest Labs is what we used to do it. So to do that. And that's how we sort of do that. And that's awesome. But we're also, remember, we ship TFS, or Azure DevOps Server, as it's going to be called. We ship that, and we ship the on-premises product, the self-hosted product, and we ship the hosted product. We have to ship the same 2 things. If we were only going to ship Azure DevOps, it'd all be in PaaS, Azure Functions and blah, 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 all the latest PaaS stuff, because you get the greatest density of compute here, so it's cheaper to run. And we get an Azure bill just like everybody does. So we're trying to run the service with as lower Azure resources possible by getting increased density. But we're not, because we have to ship on-prem as well. And we don't want our customers to have to go buy an Azure stack. We want them to be able to run it on a Windows Server box in the cupboard. So we have the same code that we ship in both places. So how do we do that? Well, we actually, to begin with, we took what was TFS, which was this big monolithic code base, and we kind of split it into two very painfully and very costly to get it to have a bit of data center resiliency. So we split it into two things, and this is actual proper, like, old-fashioned VMs, you know, running in the cloud. So it's a lift and shift, you can think of it as. But massively sort of parallelized and lots of them and using lots of VARM templates to actually deploy them and all that sort of thing. And then we managed to get to a point where we had, TFS and what we call SPS. There is actually a service in Azure DevOps called TFS, which is really confusing, where like version control lives and, you know, work items and things. And then we have our account stuff there. And, you know, we had an issue a few weeks ago around South Central when it went down, and there was some problem there. And that's because that's where the SPS cluster was for a lot of the US-based accounts. Only now are we getting to the point where we're actually Dockerizing services, where we're actually taking new services or smaller microservices that we've got that aren't these big monolithic ones, and we're making them Docker containers, and that's how we're shipping them and using all the goodness that is AKS and all that sort of stuff. We're only just doing that now because we've got this massive 20-year-old, 10-year-old code base at least, more than. So so that's the honest picture of where we're at. Now, interestingly, we recently did an exercise where we took one of these services and rewrote it in .NET Core 2.1 and ran it on some Linux containers, and oh my God, was that fast. And then we're like, because we were just thinking, we'll do it as an experiment, you know, just see what happens. But we assumed we would make this the new default when you were creating a new service. But we did it, and it was so fast. And we were like, oh. So now we're probably going to go back and rewrite some of our code as this, because it's so cost effective for us to run that way. So .NET Core 2.1 is just pretty amazing. And then finally, this is the biggest thing. Whenever I talk to customers, you go through and you show them all this stuff we've learned. We've been doing this for a decade now. And we think we're rubbish, and we make mistakes. Like, we've got a long way to go. Don't think you have to have a plan to get to where we're at before you can even start. Just start. Don't go and ask permission. What's the biggest pain you've got? Is it deploying stuff? Is it building stuff? Fix that bit and move on. Don't just go do it. Start. And don't overthink. Don't try and just, go there. When you do start this process, this is in the latest State of DevOps report, they had this J-curve, and this follows exactly what our trajectory was and kind of what I've described tonight, where we started doing a bit of automation, and we're like, DevOps is mint. This is really fast. This is amazing. And then we discovered, we wanted to get to doing PR, shifting left, having more of our validation done earlier, and we discover a massive pit of debt that we didn't realize we had. And then we spend a little bit of time sort of building our way out of that pit of debt, and then we got into productivity. So we definitely find there was this little bit of a hump where there was a bit of discouragement. Are we going to do this? Is this the right way to go? And we sort of battled on through that, and then it was good. So that's fairly typical from our experience. So have a read of a State of DevOps report. From Dora, there's two called State of DevOps report, one from Puppet and one from Dora. Go read this is from the Dora one. Right, so, as I say, just get started. A journey of 1,000 miles begins in a single sprint. Just do something, make it a bit better, move on to the next thing. And that's it. Thank you for waiting for me this evening. DevOps isn't all magic and unicorns, okay? You just got to get started. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for waiting for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for coming, joining us tonight, flying all the way over, and all the fun and frolics on the way over.
Yeah, emergency landings. Awesome.